All right. Good evening. Our apologies, but we definitely wanted to make sure we were coming correct for this first session of the Road to Residency program. My name is Dr. Cameron Matthews, and I'm joined by two of my amazing colleagues, my family, really, more than anything. We are excited to be bringing you this program, the Tour for Diversity in Medicine, aligned with the Student National Medical Association and the Latino Medical Student Association. This is our third year that we've hosted the Road to Residency program, really in an effort to support our graduating medical students and make sure that they are successful during these next couple of months into the residency application process. So we know you guys have a lot of questions. We apologize again for getting started a little bit late, but we really hope that you interact with us, you share some questions in the comments. I am ecstatic to introduce Dr. Brandon Henry and Dr. Minerva Romero Arenas. I'll let them introduce themselves with a little bit more detail as they go along. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, follow us at Tour for Diversity, the number 4. And hopefully, actually, maybe one day you can join us as we go around the country and try to reach students like you everywhere we go. Thanks so much, everybody. Talk to you later.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. We're going to go ahead and start our slide sets, and as we get those loaded up, we'll go ahead and give a little bit of background. I'm Dr. Romero Arenas. I'm a surgeon. I do general and endocrine surgery. I'm part of the faculty at Weill Cornell Medicine, and I work in Brooklyn at New York Presbyterian Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. I'm originally from Mexico City and have lived in various places of the U.S., proud alumni of Arizona State University and the University of Arizona College of Medicine. Dr. Henry.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Brandon Henry. I am a sports medicine physician in Riverside, California. I am the Chief Athletics Medical Officer at California Baptist University, head team physician for the athletics. I am also a team physician for our USA Olympic men's water polo team. And let's see here. Yeah, originally from Los Angeles, proud alum of Sacramento State University and the illustrious Howard University College of Medicine. So definitely happy to be here. And let's have some fun.
All right. So today we're going to give you an overview of the matching process. First of all, we want to go over what you're going to do for planning for your 4th year. What is ERAS? What is an RMP? We're going to go through a detailed look at the match calendar, and then we'll talk a little bit about tips for your personal statement, your letters of recommendation, and virtual interviews. So looking at the 4th year, we're going to talk about can we go to the next slide, please? So we're going to talk about some key points that you want to get ready for a 4th year. So you want to look at your step 2. That should already be scheduled for most students on this webinar. Step 2 is a really key part of the application process. You really want to have those scores, particularly if you're in some of the more competitive residency programs, but also know that a lot of programs are starting to put a lot more weight on step 2. One of the things that changed over the last couple of years because of COVID was that step 2 clinical skills was eliminated. And so that is definitely a welcome change. But you do still want to get the clinical knowledge part of step 2 scheduled. And that will have a really important impact on your 4th year schedule, because as you know, you're going to be trying to schedule your sub-internship rotations as well as any visiting electives. I would say that the majority of programs are looking at scheduling electives now for the fall. Those that are scheduled for August, September, October are probably already allotted. And so if you haven't yet booked a visiting elective and you still want to do it, you really want to run to make sure that you do that before the interview season. The interview season is going to continue to be virtual this year, and that usually happens around November, December. If you have any time in your schedule and you want to complete any research, this is also an opportunity to do it during your 4th year. And then, of course, we want to go through your letters of recommendation, which should come from mentors who know you well and who can write a strong letter of recommendation. And then certainly you want to schedule a meeting with your mentors, and in many specialties, you also want to really take a look at meeting with the chair of your department, because letters from the chair of department tend to carry a lot of weight in your letters of recommendation throughout various applications. The ERAS is the Electronic Residency Application Service. Your school should have already given you a token and you should have already registered, but if you haven't, please look to this as one of your items to do by the end of the week. You're going to spend a lot of time filling out an application. There's many components to the ERAS portal. You have to submit requests for transcripts of your USMLEs. You have to submit requests for letters of recommendation. So even though you are individually asking people to write letters for you, the official letter must be submitted directly to the ERAS system and not in an email form, for example, to you. In addition, you're going to look to the My ERAS program to select the programs that you will be sending your application for residency. Separately from the students version of My ERAS, the deans of medical schools have their own portal where they will be submitting the medical student school performance evaluation and also all of your transcripts. There's a separate portal for those of us who are writing letters of recommendation, and there's a different portal also for the program directors of residency programs. So a lot of moving parts. The match is run by the National Residency Matching Program. This is a completely separate program to the My ERAS. In the match, in the NRMP program, you will submit a ranking list. You will have a computer algorithm. It's actually a Nobel Prize winning algorithm that will match each student according to the rank of the program to then the student that the program ranks best. So basically what we are saying is that you will match at the place that you like the most, which also wants you the most. So who's in the NRMP? It's called the main residency match. Most specialties are in the main residency match. If you are in one of a few select residency tracks like ophthalmology, like neurology, like urology, ophthalmology, those are all residency programs that fall into what we call the early match. And so you are going to have a different calendar and timeline than what we are presenting today. But if you're applying to those specialties, you more than likely are already at least halfway through this process because the match does occur several months earlier. And really the main tip that we want to say about the match is that you really want to be honest and share your true preferences to make the algorithm work best for you. You create your rank order list in the order of your true preferences, not based on what you think or what your chances are of matching at any specific program. Next slide, please. So here's a picture graphic. I'm all about visual representation. And so this gives you a sort of map of where the application process will be this year. Back in June, the ERAS applications opened up for people to start filling them out. And in September, the registration for the NRMP will open up. Keep in mind that in parallel, in September, ERAS submission will be allowed. September 7th is when you can actually start submitting applications to residency programs. Of course, keep in mind that residency programs will not be able to view applications until the end of the month. However, you still want to aim for that September 7th date because the program does timestamp when your applications are going in. And so generally programs tend to prioritize people who submitted their application early over people who submit later in the application cycle. So towards October, you should be receiving more interview invitations because, of course, programs are not viewing the applications until the end of September. But keeping that in mind, we're going to fast forward a little bit to the spring. And in February, the NRMP ranking program will open up so that you can start to submit a rank list. Keep in mind that you can play around with that ranking list right up until March 1st. And know that the NRMP ranking occurs in 2 steps. So first is just the process of creating the list, but then there's a second step, and that deadline is March 1st to actually certify your ranking list. If you create a list but do not certify it, you will not enter the National Residency Match Program. So you definitely want to make sure that you keep both of those dates in your calendar. And of course, we look ahead to March when Match Week will start on March 13th. We'll go into a little bit more about what Match Week means, but Match Day occurs on March 17th, and that is something that happens all the way across the nation. Everybody gets their match at the same time. So again, showing you some specific calendar dates. We talked about the ERAS application has already opened starting in June. In September, the NRMP registration starts. September 7th is when you really want to aim for sending your applications to residency programs. You also want to make sure that you have registered for the NRMP by January 31st. There is a deadline for that so that they know how many people will be in the match. Your ranking list, of course, has to be certified by March 3rd. So keeping in mind that you're going to go through a process of your sub-internships and maybe your step 2. And then in the fall and winter, you're really going to be focusing on your virtual interviews. And then towards the spring, when you're actually looking to match, you're really going to be looking at any electives and, of course, any vacation that you may have planned. We do see some questions in the chat, and we'll address those in a second. So how and when do we register for the match is something that we have already answered, but yes, please Google National Residency Match Program, and that is something that you will be able to peruse the website. The other question said, how do I figure out who is a department chair at my school? So you can look to Google and other search engines. You can also look at your specific school website, and you want to find out who that person's assistant is and include them in any email correspondence so that they may be able to help you schedule those interviews. You should also look to your clerkship directors as potential points of contact who may be able to point you in the right direction in terms of who to get letters from and how to get a meeting set up with the chair. So we'll go ahead and move on. We'll talk a little bit about Match Week. So Match Day is March 17th, but that entire week leading up to it is called Match Week. So on the first day, which this year in 2023 will be March 13th, at 10 a.m., all applicants will receive an email that says, hopefully it will say, congratulations, you have matched. It will not give you any information about where that is, what program it is, but it will give you a yes, no answer, okay? If you fall into the smaller group of people who get a you have not matched email, then you will enter a process called the SOAP, or the Supplemental Offer and Acceptance Program. And that will begin over the next couple of days. There's a completely separate calendar and application process for this. The SOAP will be a series of interviews and acceptance notifications. There's 3 rounds of basically next level match that occur between March 14th, 15th, 16th, and on March 16th at 5 p.m., the SOAP ends. At this time, people who are in the SOAP mostly know where they're matching, but it's not until March 17th that all results really become publicly available. Medical schools usually host a match day ceremony or process of some sort. That will happen. It's supposed to happen at noon across the country, noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific. And by 1 p.m., the match results will be available in the system. So here are some stats from the 2022 match. These are the stats that are available throughout the internet, but you can see that 80% of applicants matched to PGY1 or intern level positions, and almost 94% of all intern level positions were filled in the match. You can also see that there were more positions offered compared to 2021. There were more programs participating in the match, 177 more programs specifically, and about 500 more primary care positions were offered. We want to let you know that there's a growing presence of IMGs, growing presence of allopathic students who match into residency spots, but also osteopathic and US IMGs, as well as foreign medical grads. You can find all of these stats online. And I'm going to point you to a really specific resource, which is the NRMP results and data. This is a publication that the NRMP puts out every year, and the 2022 stats about where people match, what kind of characteristics each applicant had, who matched into what specialty, all of that will be available on the match website as well. So another good resource for you to take a look at. I'm going to go ahead and tap in Dr. Henry, if you can tell us a little bit about personal statements.
Yeah, so real quick, just to answer one of the questions. So just to clarify, we can submit ERAS on September 7th, but the programs won't be able to view until September 28th. So yes, and believe the way it is really think of it as everybody submits their applications, and in order to, and the way I see it, and again, Dr. Romero can probably chime in a little bit on this, but it eliminates some of the early biases they may get just from people sending it in early. You get a good chunk of applications, and then at that point, they can begin looking at it. But what would you say with that, Dr. Romero Arenas?
Yeah, there's always been a period during which the applicants can submit the application, and a period where the programs are not really allowed to see them. Part of that has to do with allowing your application to go through completely. But either way, you really, like we said, really want to aim for the beginning of the application season to be able to do so.
And honestly, with all of the dates that were just discussed, and I was not the most the best at planning, right? The best at organizing. And so I think one thing that I would encourage everybody to do really is that if having a calendar or a program or something like that is not necessarily your strong suit, start working on it now. So then that way, once you begin this process, because the reality is that once you begin this process, it goes, and it may seem like it takes a long time, but in all actuality, it really doesn't, right? And you're getting emails all the time with various dates, and in order to keep all of it together when you're scheduling these interviews with these interviews, you have to really make sure you're planning it all out very well, especially for some of you that are going to do very well, right, and have a gang of interviews. You got to make sure you're well organized, because what you don't want to do is schedule multiple interviews and you've messed up some of your times. Now you're trying to, reach out to this program and trying to, fix your own kind of error. It happens, but again, work to mitigate that. So anyways, we'll get to
I'm going to chime in for a second, because
Yes.
technology is our friend now. And actually, I looked all of this stuff up today to make sure I was double checking and cross-referencing the dates and I wasn't giving any inaccurate information. And if you go to the website, actually, they have a button where you can just add it automatically to your calendar. And I always say, I don't go anywhere if my phone doesn't tell me that I need to be at a meeting or a specific appointment, and use it to your advantage so that it's there. I tend to be somebody who is mega organized, and I usually have a written calendar plus my electronic calendar plus like a million notifications on all of my smart devices. So try to use whatever you think will be helpful to you. I did see a question in the chat, and yes, letter writers will be able to submit letters of recommendation after you submit the ERAS application to program. The letters do not all need to be in, but of course, we'll talk a little bit more about this. You want to encourage your letter writers to get those letters submitted as soon as possible. Let's go ahead and get started with personal statements. And
Yeah.
Dr. Henry is great with telling your story.
Yeah. So, there we go. Yeah. So when it comes to the personal statement, I think you want to look at this again as something that, as we say at the very top, tells your story, right? I think you want these programs to really get a good understanding of who you are based on this writing, right? And it's a process that you should be okay with taking plenty of time. That I've had in my past, I've had times where I was up to maybe 10 different trials, I'll say, at writing my personal statement in order to get the right one that I felt like really spoke to who I was, and to my character and what I would bring to the organization or that program. So give yourself time, right, to make sure that you can write a very good, clear, concise personal statement. Your story, I like to tell people at the very beginning of your personal statement, you kind of do want something that brings them in at that very beginning part, because you want them to be hooked in a sense, right, on what you're about to tell them going forward. All right, so think about your story, write down different bullets and then kind of start to write it all out and just kind of let it flow from there. Make sure you have somebody that you know and you trust, that can proofread it for you, but they will also give you an honest account of what it really says, right? Make sure that they um, are honest about your grammar, all of it, right? And if they have to tear it up a bunch of times, it's okay. That's what you want, because you want to make sure that you put your best product out there. Be yourself in this personal statement, and I think that is very important, because a lot of these programs, and Dr. Romero Rennes can tell you, they can see through the silliness. And when I say silliness, I mean when you're not being your authentic self. They know it and they can see it. And so when you are not being who you are, again, that takes you out of the running in a sense, right? It's a very hard process to go through and very slim numbers. So be you. I always like to think of it as who you are. A program is going to want to, and if a program doesn't want to, that's okay, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? So be yourself. And when I say be yourself, again, I also say, we all have different ways of writing. We all have different ways of telling our story. We all have different ways of describing who we are and why we want to go into pediatrics, surgery, neurology, internal medicine. We all have different ways of saying that. So find your creative way in doing that, or whoever you are, and tell your story that way. So then that way you're, again, putting the best product forward, but you're also allowing for that program to see who you are, and get excited about wanting to bring you in for an interview to have a conversation with you. Watch your word counts. You can get very, very, very wordy, and you can lose people very quickly simply by having too many words. So be very cautious about that. Next slide, please. So the 6 to 8 weeks in advance. Again, so when you're asking your faculty for these letters of recommendations, a lot of us in the organization, we are now at this point where we are being asked to write letters of recommendation for people. And I know I can speak for myself, and one of the most annoyingest, if I can use that word, things is when I'm asked to write a letter of rec 1 week before or 2 weeks before. Um, it's just not considerate of the person's time, effort, and energy. The other part of that is that you want, again, the best product to be put out there. You want a letter that clearly states who you are, why you are the amazing person that you are, and what you will bring um, to that particular program. Well, in order to get that best product, it takes time, and you don't want somebody who will write a letter within a week just because you asked. They put something out there that doesn't really say much of any substance, and then when you go forward, again, programs see that. They see right through it, and they again, it's another kind of a ding in a sense on your application. So give yourself plenty of time when you're asking your faculty or advisors or mentors um, to write a letter of recommendation. I was never a big fan of the whole asking a letter writer for a strong recommendation, but I get it now. I don't think I got it before when people would always say that, but I think when you're on these committees and you're reading letters of recommendation from some of these applicants, you really do recognize there's a big difference between a strong letter, just a kind of a middle of the road letter, and then the letter that was written just, again, maybe a week or so, or just written because it was asked. It does make a difference. So you know, be very diligent about who you ask to write a letter for you. Um, I look at when you're looking at program requirements, right? So I do think that some writers are better for certain programs. Now, again, that could be because of their specialty. It could be because of maybe who they know. It could be because of what particular tools and such that they have. So, I would say again, be very diligent about how you choose to ask, who you choose to ask for your letters of recommendation for your application. Again, this is it's chess, not checkers. You know what I mean? So you want to be able to play this game and play correctly so that you can get, again, the best product forward. Sorry, real quick. Is there a specific word count we should aim for in our personal statement? I believe there is there is a word count.
There is going to be a limit on the program, and I would say for most specialties, you want to aim for about 1,000 words. Definitely keep in mind that when you submit it, the ERAS program may not specifically match your Word document, so you want to play with that a little bit. And there was another question in the chat. Is there a date that you should have taken your step 2 so that score can be part of your application? Remember that the scores have to be available. If you want them to be a part of the original application, you should have already taken step 2, because those scores do take 2 to 4 weeks, and depending on how busy step 2 is, they may prolong that period. So if you have not taken it yet and are scheduling now, it will not be available. I believe it will not be available by that September 7th opening deadline.
And I think one thing that Miss Lily B just said in the comments, I think is important, is keep your personal statement at 1 page. I think that's key, right? Again, you want to be clear and concise about the product that you're putting out there. Okay, we can go forward to, let me see, next slide. Here we go. All right, so I personally, the interview is the fun part for me because I kind of feel like now you can actually see who I am. I always believed that all I needed was a pinky toe inside the door. If I could get a pinky toe inside the door and you could bring me in for an interview, boom, it's going to be a done deal. Now, again, not everybody is as excited about the interview stage as I am. But again, I love the interview because one, I love to talk, as y'all can see. And it's kind of fun for me. So again, but be a star. And the interviews, like Dr. Romero Rennes was saying, was going to be virtual, right? So it's a little bit different than it was in person to a certain degree about how you have your whole setup. So we'll go to the next slide. When it comes to getting ready for these interviews, have an idea of what you want to say, how you want to say, but be authentic. Again, be yourself. You can tell again very quickly in an interview when you come off sounding like you've already have everything memorized, or you had a ghostwriter, right? And you just went ahead and spit what somebody else told you to say. You know what I'm saying? Like, we get on rappers about that all the time, about ghostwriters, right? But they're just saying what somebody else wrote, right? But be yourself, write your own. You know what I mean? And be who you are in front of that camera. And again, like Dr. Anani said, shine bright like a diamond in there. Now, post-it notes, I think I really truly do love. I've learned that post-it notes are really great. The tough part with post-it notes, honestly, is that you can be, so if I have post-it notes, right, like I have some in my office here, right, I've got these, but if I have them on my screen and such, if you guys track my eyes, right, I'm doing this, I'm looking around, you kind of see that, and I think that takes away from your interview, right? I think what that does is it's a distractor. Now, instead of your interviewer being able to really listen to and focus on what you're saying, your eyes are doing this. Now, yes, it should be in a place where you don't necessarily have to move your eyes so much, but if you want to do that, yes, but be smart about that. Again, I think if you practice this with your friends, you can. Some people say practice talking to a wall about these things. Again, get a group of get a group of people together and share some of the common questions, and just talk and get comfortable with talking about who you are and why, and challenges that you've had, successes that you've had, things you can do better. Get good and comfortable with the common things. Next slide. When you're looking for uh on camera, right? Now, again, I'm very animated. I do a lot of different things with my hands. But the tough part, right, is that it can be also very distracting, like I was saying. So you do have to practice keeping your hands in a comfortable place for you, right? Um, it's hard because even now we do so many of these virtual presentations. I still have my hands all over the place because I'm an active speaker. But I also remind myself when I'm doing it, okay, Brandon, keep your hands down, and you can, work with it how you need to. But pay attention to where you're looking. We just kind of talked about how your eyes are moving all over the place, right? Again, if we were in an interview, we would be talking just like this, right? You would see me, we'd be making eye contact. The camera is the same exact thing. There's no difference, right? You're still looking at a person in a sense. Don't get caught up in looking at where the person is on the screen, right? If I'm setting up an interview right now with Dr. Romero Rennes, right? I see her at the left of my screen there. Now, I want to be talking to her, but I don't want to talk to her picture, right? I want her to see my eyes and know that I am talking directly to her, right? So I think that is something important that you have to remember. What you're wearing, boy, the clothing is always a big topic, right? I think now it's kind of hard because a lot of people do the whole top and bottom thing, right? Where it's like, oh, I'll make sure I'm very professional on top, and then on the bottom I might have shorts. I know me personally, I would mentally, for me, I would rather just dress as though I'm going to be actually at an interview in person, because it'll get me in the mindset, right? It'll get me game ready. It'll get me ready to do the daggum thing. You know what I'm saying? So because I would, if I just had my top suit and tie and everything ready to go, and then regular hoop shorts on the bottom, I don't feel necessarily that I'm ready for the game. Everybody has their own comfort level. Everybody has their own thing. But what you have to make sure is that understand how your camera works, right? Understand how your camera is positioned, right? If your camera is too low, again, we've seen the Folgers commercial. Was it Folgers? I think it was a Folgers commercial, right? Where the guy accidentally jumped up and right, he's got nothing but his boxer shorts on. You got to pay attention to all those different things. You know what I mean? Because that's real. And the last thing you want to do is not give yourself an opportunity at a program simply because the camera shifted or, did something funny and you're not prepared. Dress, in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, dress game ready, top to bottom. So then that way you can be mentally ready for the game and you can be dialed in and ready to go. Um, Facial expressions, you will have some interviewers who will ask you certain questions or say certain things that may try to throw you off your game. Okay. And it's going to happen at some places. You got to watch your face. Now, and it's hard to do. And it's I sound like the pot calling the kettle black because I don't watch my face too often. But it's something you got to pay attention to. Okay. Because again, on camera, it's very easy to see it. And once somebody sees it, that could be that, and that could be the end of that interview to a certain degree. So just be very mindful of that. Okay. And again, treat this game as though you're sitting directly across from that person. Next slide. Time management, and we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. But again, when you are authentic in these interviews, sometimes the time just naturally goes and you don't even recognize that you've lost, or not lost, but that you've been speaking for a period of time. Um, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I think that's you being authentic, right? That's you being you. Now, you don't want to just to ramble, right? Don't try to talk just to fill space. If what you are saying has some substance to it and it's important, it answers the question, then by all means, right? That's okay. But allow for there to be some conversation and some dialogue. I think one of the best things you can do on an interview is for there to be some dialogue and back and forth. Some of the best interviews I have had were when it was maybe one question was asked, but we were able to flow from category or place to place, and it wasn't even like questions were being asked. It all just kind of flowed together. Um so I say all that just to say, yes, answer the questions, but again, be you. Um and don't try to BS anybody on this journey. um Go ahead,
And
Doctor.
you should also anticipate some of the questions that you're going to be
Yes.
asked so that
Right.
you can think in advance about those things that you're going to want to express. Some of the information that you are going to share on your personal statement, you will want to sort of reinforce in the answers that you're giving in the interview. You're also not going to be able to fit all of your background and all of your interests and all of your extracurriculars in the personal statement. So you want to leave some things to be able to share and discuss and expand on during the interview. But for example, one of the most popular questions is, why are you going into X specialty? And that should be an answer that you're able to sort of rattle off relatively in a concise manner.
And going along with what you were just saying too in the personal statement, understand that if you did have some struggles during medical school, and that's okay, you should address it in your personal statement, but don't weigh heavily on it, right? Don't write 2 or 3 paragraphs on it. Address it, and then that way, if it wants to be, it may be brought up in the interview, and attack it head on and show you how you've grown from it, and then move on from it. Okay. Okay. Next slide. Sorry. Yes. So find a good, quiet space that has good white walls. Or some kind of quiet background that allows you to the interviewer to focus on you and not necessarily everything around you. I was just playing with some of the background settings on on this on the camera feature, and so for example, right, we're just going to go ahead and show it. What you don't want to do is do something like this. Hey, everybody. My name is Brandon Henry, and I am now. If I came to you with this background, right? You're looking in the background. You're like, okay, well, what is there's an American flag? Oh, I wonder what he was. Now, it may be a conversation starter, but it's probably not what you want to have as your background on your interview. Okay, again, because it ends up being busy, and it takes away from what you are trying to uh, the point you're trying to get across to your interview. Okay, so make sure, again, good, clean, quiet environment. If you need the headphones in order to be able to really kind of lock in and just hear everything, and they can then use that. If you feel okay without it and you feel like the space is good enough without the headphones, then that's okay as well. Next slide. So we just kind of talked about uh, this. So, right, I wouldn't sit on the couch. Right, you know what I'm saying? And you know, you're sitting on the couch and kind of lean back and again doing I wouldn't do that, right? Make sure, again, I think you guys all know this, but you would be surprised at how many times we do have to discuss these things because some people really honestly just don't know. So use a desk, be smart about your area of which you are doing your interview. Next slide. I personally would, you know, again, the laptop or computer, I think, is the best way to go. I think the tablets, yes, depending on the size, but it may be kind of hard to navigate the different interfaces the way you may need to on a tablet. So I would, try to make sure you have your laptop or your computer. All the other different devices on there, again, I wouldn't on the phone unless, again, you were on the road and that was the only way possible to do it, right? We just talked about the headphones, if need be. Again, software is another important one, right? So make sure you have everything needed for your interview. Again, what you don't want to do is anything that will distract from you putting forth your best product, right? And if that comes to, oh, I'm so sorry, I have to take a second to. Some of these interviewers only have but 5-10 minutes. All right, now, and if you've taken 3 minutes to download software and restart everything and then jump back, they may only give you 5 minutes now because they have to take other time, and now we won't say hurt your opportunities, but you have not been able to possibly put forth, again, your best product. Right, so keep all these different things in mind. Yes, ma'am.
That being said, if and I say if, it has happened to people I know. If you do have technological glitches and you do have to resort to whatever else, know that it does happen. Know
Right.
that all of us are aware and will work with you, and be able to sort of get back in the game and get through the interview as best as you can.
And that's an important part, again, about the idea of getting back in the game, right? Because to me, again, I look at everything as a game, and you have to make in-game adjustments at times, and you have to be able to make an adjustment and get back in the game and be ready to go. Even in medicine, as you guys are learning and will continue to learn, things happen. And when things do happen, you have to be able to think quickly on your feet, make moves, and get back ready to go. Um, the webcam lighting, some people, I don't have one personally. I'm not there yet in life, but
the webcam, there are many products that you can do, that you can use. You can find them at most convenience stores. You certainly just want to try to keep the camera at eye level. If you see where I'm sitting, you want to have a certain distance from the ceiling or the top of your camera to your mid shoulders. You don't want to be too far back in it, and you want to try to keep the camera position at an eye level. So as we discussed earlier, you can look like you're directly speaking to that person as it probably looks now, as opposed to when I'm reading text and I'm not directly looking at the camera. Let's go on to the next slide. Yes, test run your equipment. And many different platforms are being used. So keep in mind that the program should be emailing you specific instructions about what platform they're using, what kind of system they will require. But essentially, many of these platforms, due to the COVID pandemic, have started to run very similar operating system requirements. Next slide. We talked about all of this, but again, eye level, light source behind the camera in front of you, and your shoulders should be within the frame. Next slide. Here's two examples of what you want to see. You don't want to be too close. You don't want to be too far. You want to have some frame of reference. Next slide. Thank you, Dr. Henry, for showing us.
I got you. See that? You see that?
I love it. I love it. And we talked about attire. I do want to just make a point for women. Traditionally, you want to know that you want to have your hair done. You want to have a relatively conservative hairstyle, relatively conservative makeup and jewelry. This is a professional job interview. This is not a casual event. This is not a cocktail wedding event. This is not a I'm going to the club kind of makeup event. And so you do want to be mindful of some of those, I would say, restrictions or observing some of those norms. And for men, Dr. Henry, you can speak to this a little bit, but clean shave,
Right.
clean haircut.
Yeah, and I was also going to say, again, when you're thinking about your attire, I'm the type that I need to be able to speak a little bit with my attire. So I personally like the navy or the dark gray suit, just because, again, you can kind of have your tie and your shirt kind of gives a little bit of a pop, not too much, right? Because you want to make sure you're not too loud over the camera. But again, it also goes back to being who you are. Don't do too much on this. I would stick to your blacks, your dark grays and your navies. Again, get the job first, then you can kind of do some other things. But again, be conservative, but also at the same time, be you. And if that means you want to have a tie and a pocket square, right, that gives a little bit of an umph, right, just enough for them to say, I see what you're doing there, then it works. Also have an understanding of the programs you're applying to. Some of these programs are way more conservative than others, right? So if you know you're interviewing at particular names, then maybe you have to kind of scale it back, right? And if you know you're applying other places, then maybe you can do a little more. So yeah.
Next one.
There's the bottoms. See? Folgers.
Next slide.
Yeah. So to be early is to be on time is to be late. If anybody who has ever, been a part of been a part of a Greek organization, this is something that they teach us all the time, right? To be early is to be on time is to be late. If you know you have an interview that starts at 10:30, right? You should be in front, in my opinion, you should be in front of that camera ready to go at least by 10:15. You probably should start, if you can, right? Start playing with the computer, test run and everything about maybe even 30 to 45 minutes before, so you can make sure that everything is good to go. That way, once it's game time and you see them, they come onto the screen, boom, you're ready to go.
Next slide, please. So we've gone through all of our slides. Please take a look back. This will be posted up on the SNMA Facebook website, on YouTube. It will be available online, but take a look at those application calendars. Keep in mind that we are hosting separate workshops for the supplemental application and the signaling for the specialty panels. For SNMA and LMSA members, you will receive emails if you haven't already seen it to schedule a mock interview. Is something that we are also bringing on again this year. When you do receive that information, make sure that you forward your CV and personal statement to the person who is going to be conducting that mock interview with you. Attend virtual residency programs that you may have access to. And of course, you will receive a post-program survey. We would love it if you could complete it for us. Next slide. These are the subspecialty panels. Again, you should be receiving these in your email, and please do register in advance. There is a deadline to register for the subspecialty panels, and that's going to be, that's going to be on August 19th. We also will have September 16th, a workshop on personal statements and CVs. And the week of the 21st, we'll have the specialty panels. Last couple of questions that we did see in the chat. Somebody asked, did we use the webcam lighting? So I did an interview virtually, but I have participated in virtual programs, and I do currently have a special ring light, so to speak. Somebody else asked about logging into the interviews early. Most programs will allow some of that early time to be able to sort of just test run, and there is a lot of downtime. So yes, absolutely, try to just connect with the program coordinators or the people who are going to be your primary contact for a lot of these logistical issues. And then somebody else had asked a question about signaling and preference. We will have a completely separate workshop for that. But for everyone who's viewing this, know that there is a supplemental application. It was in our calendar that we provided at the beginning of the slides. And there is a new part of the application and matching process, which is called preference signaling, in which you can indicate to program that you may have a specific preference for a geographic location or other elements of the program that may communicate to them officially that you are more interested in that specific program. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media at Tour for Diversity. Similarly, SNMA, LMSA, if you have not joined as an official member, do join as an official member. This is one of the excellent benefits of being a member, but also know that we have some exclusive opportunities to be able to do mock interviews with physicians across the country. And we really want to take the time to thank the organizers behind the scenes doing a lot of work to make these series possible. Dr. Hammond Matthew, who was on earlier, all of the leadership at SNMA and LMSA who have worked to get all of these workshops set up for all of you. Dr. Henry, thank you for your time as well. And
Kenneth, I'm a Sigma. Just I wanted to answer that question real quick. He asked me, so I just had to let him know that I'm a Sigma right quick. Okay, cool.
And last question, somebody asked about couples matching. That is a completely personal decision. It is one of the topics in terms of marital status. That is a question that is legally off limits. And so it is your choice if you decide to disclose that or not. And you should talk to your mentors about pluses and minuses of doing so. And then, of course, talk to your partner about how to go through ranking. That's a little bit out of the scope of this workshop. So, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate your attendance. We appreciate everyone's time. And best of luck in this match application cycle.
Absolutely. Uh-oh. I feel like I should play some like exiting music.